Today we're going to be learning about paying for college. There are many different ways people pay for college. Let's explore the options. First, we have scholarships. Scholarships are given by many different sources. They're typically based on achievement and they do not need to be paid back. Let's look at an example. Henry receives an academic scholarship for $3,200 per year. Henry is being rewarded for being a good student with this scholarship that does not need to be paid back. Next, we have student loans. A student loan is money that is borrowed, often from the government or a bank. Unlike with a scholarship, with a student loan, the money does need to be paid back, typically with interest. An example would be that Henry takes out a student loan to cover the part of his tuition that his scholarship does not cover. Once Henry graduates college and gets a job, he will start paying back the money he borrowed for his student loan. We also have work-study programs. Work-study programs allow students to earn money for college in exchange for doing a job. An example would be that Sarah works at the library on campus. In exchange, her school pays 15% of her tuition. Wow, what an awesome way to help Sarah pay for college. Next, we have grants. Grants are given by the government, schools, or nonprofit organizations. They are typically based on financial need. They do not need to be paid back. An example would be that Jeremy received a grant for $8,000 towards his tuition. Jeremy does not need to pay this money back. Lastly, we have savings. Savings are money that is already saved in a bank. Students might use their own savings or their family's savings to pay for college. Let's look at an example. Zawan worked at an ice cream shop in high school. She put most of the money she earned into a savings account that she will use to help pay for college. What a great idea, Zawan! Now let's use our knowledge of the different ways people pay for college to work through some example scenarios. Cindy will attend McDavid College this fall. Tuition for 1 year is $9,700. Cindy plans to earn 15% of her tuition this year at her work-study job. How much money does she plan to earn at her work-study job? So let's think. In order to determine how much money she plans to earn at her job, we'll first need to start with the cost of tuition, which is $9,700. Since Cindy plans to earn 15% of her tuition at her job, we'll need to multiply her tuition by 15/100ths, which is 15% in decimal form. Multiplying gives us 1,455, meaning that Cindy plans to earn $1,455 at her work-study job this fall. Our next example states Bridget is attending college on a nursing scholarship. Tuition this year is $12,600. The scholarship pays 60% of her tuition and Bridget will pay the rest. How much more money will Bridget need to pay in tuition? This problem is similar to the first example. Let's start with the cost of tuition, $12,600. Since her scholarship pays 60% of her tuition, we'll want to multiply that number by 60/100ths, or 6/10ths. We get 7,560. Which means that Bridget's scholarship will pay $7,560. But we need to answer the question, how much more money will Bridget need to pay in tuition? So let's start again with the total tuition, $12,600. We determined that the scholarship will pay $7,560. To determine the amount Bridget will have to pay, let's subtract the amount of the scholarship from the cost of tuition. That answers our question. Bridget will need to pay $5,040 more in tuition. For our third and final example, the scenario states that tuition at Catalpa College is $11,500 this year. Melissa has a grant that covers 30% of her tuition. She has saved $1,800 and she earned a basketball scholarship that pays $2,500. How much more money will Melissa need for tuition this year? So Melissa is combining multiple methods to pay for college, which is very common. Let's start with some key information. We know the total cost of tuition is $11,500. Since Melissa's grant covers 30% of that amount, we'll want to multiply that by 30/100ths to determine that her grant covers $3,450 of her tuition. Now we are trying to ultimately determine how much more money Melissa will need for tuition. So let's start with what we know. We know that her tuition is $11,500. We know her grant covers $3,450, so let's subtract the amount the grant covers. Melissa has already saved $1,800, so let's subtract that amount as well. And lastly, her basketball scholarship pays $2,500, so let's subtract that amount too. After subtracting the grant, her savings, and her scholarship from her total tuition, she is left with $3,750, meaning she will need $3,750 more for tuition this year. Learning about the different ways to pay for college is a great way to start thinking about your future. Keep up the good work.